please welcome your moderator of the 2019 Monmouth Film Festival Industry Panel, News 12's Brian DeNovellis.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 2019 Monmouth Film Festival's Industry Panel discussion. My name is Brian DeNovellis, and thank you all for being here on this glorious weekend down the Jersey Shore in Red Bank. And on behalf of Nicholas Marchese and all the staff here, we hope to enlighten you and educate you over the next 75 minutes or so. It is my pleasure to be standing in front of you today and welcoming our 5 panelists, industry professionals from television, from film, from animation. And one by one, I would like to introduce them to you today. Our first panelist has been an animator for 9 years. He's also involved in technical design, technical artistry. He spent the last 8 years working cloth and crowd simulations for Blue Sky Studios, feature animated films. Basically, if you need somebody to fill a stadium with animated people, this is your guy. Greg Marino. Our next panelist is a senior vice president at Nickelodeon. She manages and executes promotional campaigns across digital and linear platforms for Nickelodeon. She's also worked at AMC, Spike TV, and the Food Network. Please give a big round of applause for Nancy Liedersdorf. Our next industry panelist professional is a television producer. Most notably, she's worked on Law & Order Special Victims Unit. She's worked on Marvel's The Punisher, which airs on Netflix. She also wrapped up recently a production which people of my generation are going to be fascinated with. It's an American saga which promotes and fictionalizes the rise of the Wu-Tang Clan. She's also preparing to shoot Emergence for ABC. Please give a big round of applause for Gail Barringer. Our next industry panelist is an Emmy award-winning cinematographer who has won a total of 7 Emmys for directing, producing, and cinematography. His name is Tor Rolf Johansson. And our 5th professional who will be on this panel discussing his experiences and all of his work on HGTV. He may have done work for you on Staten Island, or you may have seen his work on Love It or List It. He is a celebrity contractor, Eric Aramita. Ladies and gentlemen, your 5 industry panelists, let's have a seat and begin our discussion. So, as I said, welcome everybody to our panel discussion. Over the next 75 minutes, we hope to answer your questions. We hope you have a lot of questions for them because that's what really will keep this moving. They will share their life experiences, how they got into the business, how they got into the industry, what their experiences are like, and tell you also how they rose up to the success that they've had today. So, without further ado, would anyone like to open up and just talk about their background? Why don't we do this? Why don't we start with you, Greg, and you could just tell a little bit more about yourself than what I said.
Sure thing. Hello? Okay, cool. Hi. So I actually started my career not as an animator, but in education. I was initially a mathematics teacher for New York City. I made the transition with the help of a friend who was a character animator and inspired me to get on board and learn all these really cool things that I was excited about, but didn't personally believe that I could make a career out of it until someone convinced me otherwise. And I took a bunch of night courses and basically taught myself a whole bunch of the techniques needed for CG animation and parlayed that into an internship, which gave me a reel that I parlayed that into a degree program, got a degree. And by the time I graduated, I was a student who had a pretty decent amount of content on his reel. And I applied everywhere I possibly could, across the ocean, across the continent, to any animation studio that was looking for someone with a blend of technical and animation chops. And I got a lot of rejections. It took a while. But I eventually got lucky, and Blue Sky Studios had an opening for a technical artist. And some people who worked there had worked with me when I was a student and remembered me. And they brought me on board, and they've been there ever since.
Great story. So raise your hand on the panel if you've ever experienced rejection. Get used to it, but don't take no for an answer, as they say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, stick with it.
All right, Nancy?
Is this on? Okay. I graduated with a radio television degree and ended up in advertising somehow doing account work and never wanted to be there or do that. And I talked my way into a job at Food Network. And I was there for a few years. It's a funny story. It was at the time where people had email addresses in the job posting. So it was mmatter@foodnetwork.com. So I applied for the job, heard nothing. I called the front desk at Food Network and was like, yeah, I got a message from an M Matter, and they want to talk to me. And they're like, I don't know who you're talking about. There's a Mark Maturowski. And I'm like, yeah, that guy. So I talked my way into an interview, and he hired me, thankfully. And then from Food Network, I went to Spike TV and spent 4 or 5 years there. Then went to Nickelodeon the first time. Left there, went to AMC when Mad Men was a big deal. And Breaking Bad was coming into their second season. Launched The Walking Dead, which was really fun. And then went back to Nickelodeon. I have 2 small kids, so it seemed like the right time, and that's where I am now.
Fantastic. What college did you go to school for?
I went to several colleges, but I graduated from Monmouth University in West Long Branch.
Okay.
Yep.
Their program's come a long way.
Yeah, it really has.
No question. Gail?
Hi, everybody. I am a freelancer, and I have been a freelancer since I graduated Emerson College a long time ago. And I got my start as a production assistant on a movie, but ended up in the accounting department, oddly enough, on a movie called The Good Son with Macaulay Culkin. And I didn't really come from an accounting background, but it was a way for me to learn how movies get made, where all the costs go, and what is a camera or a Libra head, or all these fun things that I didn't know what they were, so I see them on paper, and I would go to set and learn what they looked like. And over time, I worked my way through the accounting department and managed the departments as the key, and then got my way into producing on Law & Order SVU, where I was for 14 years. And I produced about 200 hours of television on that show, which was a great show because we got to tell a lot of important stories socially that had meaning for me, and it was a great place to work, and especially because I got to work in New Jersey. We built a soundstage out of a warehouse in North Bergen, and I became really familiar with the pros and cons, mostly pros, of working in New Jersey, which was wonderful. And from there, I've gone on to do a whole bunch of Marvel stuff. I kind of fell into action stuff with Person of Interest, you might know that, Luke Cage and The Punisher. And I'm now doing a show back in New Jersey. I'm really happy to be back filming in New Jersey. The tax incentive has come back, so we're here. We're doing a show called Emergence for ABC, which is a la Stranger Things, comes out in September. So a lot of fun things to look forward to.
Great to have you back in New Jersey, Gail. Tor?
Hello. So I grew up in a small city in South Burlington, Vermont, and at the time Bernie Sanders was my mayor. It's come a long way. But I knew very early on what I wanted to do. At the age of 10, I became a photographer. I just loved looking through lenses and have that black surrounding the image, and everything looked better to me through the lens. So by the age of 13, I worked for a daily newspaper, Burlington Free Press, which was probably illegal now that I think about it, because it was not of age. But they kind of let me into the darkroom, and I started doing my own shoots. And it was quickly found out by my teachers in high school that I preferred to do videos over writing, so they would allow me to do videos and turn in a 5-minute video instead of a 10-page paper.
How about that?
So they kind of customized my education to that. I did an internship with the University of Vermont and the video team there. That was really helpful for me. And then went to film school in Ithaca College, upstate New York. I'd actually gotten into NYU, Syracuse, and Ithaca. I figured coming from Vermont, it would be a culture clash to go to New York City, which it probably would have been, because I was used to open fields and lakes and rivers and all that. So I went to Ithaca, where there's lakes and rivers. Loved it there, did 4 years, got my BFA. The weekend I graduated, I went out to LA. Just drove out across the country. A bunch of my classmates went with us. We kind of started the Ithaca Mafia in Los Angeles and kind of hired each other and got each other on crews. I started off as a camera assistant. I was a loader back in the day, which we had film. I'd spend days in the dark room or in the bag, where you'd be loading film in a dark bag. And that's how I got my start with commercials and music videos. And then I did that for about 7 or 8 years, got so tired of it. 18-hour days, just blowing me away, just no personal life. So I went into television for 15 years, had a blast. That's where the Emmys came from. Then I got bored with that, and I went back to school to get my MFA in cinematography from Art Center. I did that for 4 years, and the weekend I graduated from that, I started with Blackmagic Design. And I've been there for 5 years now.
Excellent. All right, last but not least, Eric.
Well, I'm Eric Aramita, born and raised Staten Islander, believe it or not. Not too many people are born and raised in Staten Island. But 30-year veteran contractor and interior design contracting from the foundation up. And about 6 years ago, I was approached by NBC to basically appear on one of their competition shows. From there, that didn't pan out, took a little long. I wound up getting picked up by HGTV to work with the Property Brothers on a show called Brother versus Brother, which was a competition, and it was doing bathrooms and renovations in 2 to 3 days. So from renovation to finish, 2 to 3 days. I had them running in circles. I didn't win, but I came runner-up, but I ultimately did win because what had happened from there was I got picked up by HGTV. They were looking for a relaunch of Love It or List It, and they're looking for a new contractor in the States. It was originally shot in Toronto. So they moved it to the States. They originally wouldn't tell me what show it was. They said, go home and talk to your wife. I says, why? They says, well, it's in North Carolina. So I said, oh, okay. So I went home, said there's a show coming up in North Carolina, called them back, said, all right, you have to tell me what show it was, and they said it was Love It or List It. When they said it was Love It or List It, I says, okay, you have my attention. And I wound up giving up my local business on Staten Island, and I wound up giving full-time to the Scripps Corporation, which is now bought out by Discovery. So I work for Discovery, the Discovery Network. And I've done over 70 episodes for Love It or List It now. I'm airing in 15 different countries. The show has turned around from not bad ratings, but not so good ratings, to having the best ratings that the show ever had last season with over 17 million viewers. So I'm not saying that I am the reason for it, but the dynamic comes into play. And it's a team that wins. But I've always took this approach in building and the way that I proceed in the future. And I'll show my age a little bit. Milton Berle had said something back in the day. If no one answers the door, build one. Well, I'm the right guy. So I built my own door. And with building my own door, I've set my own future. And we'll see where it goes from here.
If anyone's ever had a bathroom remodeled or done in about a month or two, to get it done in 2 days, you got my attention, Eric. You're my guy. All right, so what do we all have in common up here? With the exception of Tor, who knew what he wanted to do when he was 10, the rest of the industry panels up here have all taken different career paths to get where they are today, even through going to night school, entering the industry in one area and opening up another door, or starting out from one area to another area, from one network to another network. They're not afraid of change. They're not afraid to change their careers. So with that being said, when did you know that this is what you wanted to do? And when did you know that this wasn't the right path? Who wants to start with that?
Yes, I can. For me, when I was going through all my night school programs, one of the classes that I was in had us work on a team project where we made a short film, the shortest of short films, almost like a 20-second spot. And after we completed that and we showed it to the rest of our classes, the amount of pride that we all had because of what we had created was so strong and so visceral. It was like, all right, this is it. Like, I want that to be my day-to-day. Like, I want to have that kind of pride every day in what I do. And yeah, that worked.
Just seeing it come out and seeing what you did and what you made and seeing how others reacted to it.
Yeah, the audience reaction was absolutely key because like when the other students saw it and they got it immediately, they knew what the message we were trying to send, and that kind of feedback loop was incredibly gratifying.
Anyone else want to?
I want to add that I may have known the genre of the work that I wanted to do, but I definitely didn't know specifically where I was going to end up. And I think if you asked the 18-year-old me, it would have been, I want to be a feature film cinematographer. When I came out to LA, I quickly realized that I did not want to be a feature film cinematographer. I didn't want to go on the road for 2 months at a time, away from family, doing long hours, not having a personal life. So I made a choice. I'm not going to do that. So your plans change and evolve with what you discover life to be in your career path.
And I'll follow up on that because I sort of walked onto a film set, my first film set, and was captivated by the energy and the people and the way I call what I do and what we do sort of a moving circus. You know, we come, we set up, we leave. And I got hooked on that. And yes, I think for us to do what we do, you have to love that kind of, I don't want to call it chaos. It is. It's controlled chaos, and there's a lot happening, and you really do get hooked on it, and you have to. If you don't love it, there's no point in being there because you do work incredibly long hours, and you are away from people, your family, if you travel. But once I was there, I sort of figured out, like, ooh, I just want to learn everything and help make and tell these wonderful stories.
This may be a general question, but what sacrifices did you have to make along the way, whether it was family or personal sacrifices or having to move or relocate, as Eric alluded to?
It really wasn't easy. I did a lot of traveling for the past 5 years, going back and forth to the Raleigh-Durham area. So I was work during the week, come home on the weekends. If I had a Monday off, I would, stay home on a Monday, but back on a plane on a Tuesday. Worked from either Monday or Tuesday to Friday afternoon. Jumped on a plane, back again. I have a 16-year-old daughter, a 14-year-old son, an 11-year-old son, and a dog, and a demanding wife, that needs for me to be around. So it really, really wasn't easy. But for what I see and for what I foresee, sky's the limit. And I want to show everyone in the world what can be done, what a New Yorker can do, what talent we have. So was it always been a dream? It's always been a dream, but I never thought it was going to come true, to be very honest with you. I just never stopped. That's the whole thing, and I still don't stop. So it's inside of you. It's really a passion that burns. Without that, I don't think it's going to happen.
It's not your 9-to-5 job, and it's not your Monday through Friday job. So
100%.
Any other sacrifices that you've made along the way?
I think it's just the realization that, being a mom and working is like kind of have to lose that I can do everything, because you're going to miss a soccer game, or you're going to miss a meeting, or you can't go out to LA in the drop of a hat. Or if you do, it's going to cause chaos at home. So I think some of the sacrifices, and going back to your question before that, I'm still not sure this is what I want to do. I love it. I grew up, huge TV watcher. But I feel like and the industry is changing so much too that, it's not the same as it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago when I started. And it's not going to be when I arrive on Monday. It's going to be different than it was on Friday. So it's exciting, and it's it keeps me going and is such a drive, but it's also a little scary. But fun. It's fun.
I was able to latch on to mentors that were kind of aligned with my goals for having a solid family and still being committed to the craft. So there's episodic television, there's local commercials, there's national commercials that are shot in LA. So there's a lot of stuff that you can still do and not have to travel extensively and be away from your family. So you kind of find your spot.
I think if you want to raise a family, right, and be a role model for your children, you could do it in so many ways, but to have success at both, you have to be around. So I think you've all hit upon it. You need that family support, right? You need that support from within in order to succeed in what you want to do.
Absolutely. I mean, when the pilot for Emergence came across my desk, they wanted to shoot in Massachusetts or Providence, Rhode Island, and it was supposed to be it's a show that takes place on the water, and we were going to cheat Long Island in Massachusetts or Rhode Island. And I said, well, wait a minute, what about New Jersey? I live in Montclair. I have 2 children who are here and a husband who also works in the film industry. And I'm like, I pitched the heck out of New Jersey because I said, I want to be here, and we can tell this story and show this great state and these great locations. So I was really excited when it got picked up, and it was a secret little win for me and then it went to series. I'm even happier. And we put together a whole crew of people who are so excited to be from New Jersey, who live in New Jersey or live close to New Jersey, and it's just a change of pace. We're seeing all these different locations, and we're making a story, and we're close to home, and it's a huge.
So when this comes out on ABC, absolutely.
Yes.
It is. I mean, if you didn't speak up, you might have had to relocate.
And I did, and it was part of my deal. I said I would do the pilot. The pilot is the first episode that you hope to get sold. You're gone for like 2 months for me, 2 or 3 months. Mm-hmm. And in my contract, it said if this were to get picked up and shot in Massachusetts or Rhode Island, I couldn't do the show because I just you can't. I couldn't. So yeah, it was a good feeling, and
Right.
Why not? We have an incentive back, and I'll keep talking about that incentive. And it's a great place to be.
We'll touch upon that incentive because that's something that I think just came to fruition back in New Jersey about a year ago, 2 years ago, where they're trying to get filmmakers to film in New Jersey, and they're giving them incentives as kickbacks, right?
That's correct. We do that in New York City. It's very popular in New York State. I was here at SVU for 14 years, 10 years in New Jersey, and when the incentive went away, we went away. And I was 9 months pregnant with my son, and we literally I had to pack up my entire operation. We spent over $65 million a year in the state, and we left. We went to New York. And to come back, we worked with the Film Commission, David Schoner, who's been amazing, to get the incentive back. Now, I'll ask the question to the audience. How many people watch TV and keep seeing New York locations over and over again? There's a lot of television out there and product, and you see the same thing, which is a wonderful thing, but open it up. We have a great casting pool out here in New York, and they can come to New Jersey and you can look at something a little different on television, especially with all the streaming, and there's so many ways to watch television now. There's so many products out there. It's nice to have a different perspective in what you're looking at.
You're just bridging me to the next topic. One right after another. Let's talk about all the options out there, right? Because it's not just when we grew up, ABC, most of us grew up, ABC, NBC, CBS, then Fox came along and PBS. We had 5 channels, right? So now, a lot of you out here who are younger, and even people who are changing their viewing habits, stream. They go online. YouTube TV is here. So there are so many different options for people to get their product out there. Let's talk about that and what it means to you to work on a series on Netflix or Hulu or something like that.
I keep getting myself tangled here. As a content creator, the streaming platforms are a game changer and a mind opener. We have so many ways to get stuff to our audience we didn't have before. The possibilities are almost endless, and everyone seems to be working on exciting properties these days. It's a wonderful time to be an animator. It really is. And streaming has enabled a lot of that.
I've wrote a new show, a home improvement show, and speaking to various different people, and someone said something very interesting to me. With all the new platforms and Netflix, Hulu, and everything out there right now, think about going streaming. And why? Well, they says, well, if there's 150 countries out there, Netflix is airing in 147 of them, and they're paying for it. So you're not just going to be known in the States, you're going to be known worldwide. So I think that has a lot to do with where TV is going, and the popularity of characters, and the fruition of shows taking off into the stratosphere. I think with the new platforms, it's sky's the limit.
Exactly. You used to have the network format is 42 minutes for what would take an hour to watch on television. Then you go into your streaming categories, and you have shows that can be 50 to 60 minutes long, and you're watching you're watching shows that are produced in Israel or in India. Netflix is opening up and doing shows in India now. And they're great. They're really well written and well produced. So just to be able to see all of those different things. I've seen television shows that are 15 minutes, little episodic shows, and they have seasons. You can watch a season and you're done. It's amazing. We never had that before. So it's a much different way of enjoying the format, and I feel like we get feature quality shows that you can download on your iPad. So it's an exciting time to be making content.
No question. So as we continue with this panel discussion, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, please raise your hand. We have somebody, I think, with microphones going around to each part of the audience. So raise your hand and we'll come around. And I think at this point, let's hear from you and have you ask questions to the industry panel. So we'll begin with this gentleman right over here in the third row.
Hi. This is just like an open question for, I guess, whoever wants to answer it, but regarding like your first major project, the first thing that you did that you consider like contributing to your career, what sort of anxieties and challenges did you face going into it? What things did you prepare for, and what things did you realize you could never really prepare for?
Great question.
Imposter syndrome is a very real thing, and for me, the first project that I worked on was Ice Age 4, and I wanted to make sure that as my first real foray into film, that it was good enough. And I would look at my work and be like, how can I make this better? It's not good enough, it's not good enough. And I would wrestle with that, and the only way to get through that was to find a couple mentors that I would trust to give me very, very honest feedback and give me the outside perspective of, all right, you're good, move on to the next one. Because in your first foray, you want to make sure that you enter with a splash. And that was a difficult thing to surmount, but it's part of the process now.
Yeah, I have to say, the fake it till you make it is key, sadly. I think my first big challenge was when I left Food Network, where I felt like I started my career and I had a wonderful mentor there. So the same thing, I went to Spike TV, and in my first week, Ultimate Fighting was starting to take off. And they said, Nancy, you have to go out to Vegas to meet with Dana White, the head of Ultimate Fighting. And I was like, all right, what is Ultimate Fighting? Okay, here I go. So I went there, I was doing spreadsheets and on how we're gonna promote the next season of the Ultimate Fighting. They put me up at the Hard Rock, which, by the way, does not have a business center. So I'm taking a cab to Staples in the middle of the night. I'm emailing my old boss from Food Network. Like, does this even make sense? So I got it all together, went to the meeting, and I don't know if anybody knows Dana White, but he didn't care about my spreadsheets. He didn't care if I was prepared or not. He's like, great, you're running 12,000 spots? Great, that's all I wanted to know. Now, do you want to come to the fight later? And I was like, okay. Yeah, so it was just really eye-opening, but having a mentor and just kind of powering through it, and it's what you do what you have to do and smile and go to a ultimate fight.
I just have one area of like a general recommendation for taking on a big project. I'd say you're gonna make mistakes. Do them before you get to the big project. Do them in a safe place. Do them in a film school, or do them with friends on a small project that you're financing. you're going to make mistakes throughout your whole career, but the more you can get them out of the way and learn from them, so when you do get that big job, you are less likely to repeat them.
And it's also important to have what I call your inner circle of people that you work with, and if you can, I mean, being a freelancer, I hire people who I've worked with before, who I have a comfort level and a vocabulary with, that we understand each other and can kind of get through big hurdles together. I think on Person of Interest, I got shut down in the middle of the day. The actor pulled a fake gun. He scared somebody. They said, "You're not shooting." And I had the whole crew stuck in a hotel room. And I'm like, what are we going to do? We can't not shoot. And I had 2 people with me, and I said, we can pull a day together. And how am I going to tell my boss, who is, at the time, was Jonah Nolan, who's the writer of Westworld? I'm like, we can't shoot anything. And we pulled it together, and we did it as a team. So it's how do you get, when those challenges are thrown at you, you have to look at your close colleagues and say, okay, we've got to put our thinking caps on, and let's try and make something and just keep going and move forward and get through it. It's challenging, but at the end of the day, it's really rewarding because you worked together and you kept it going.
Well, the vocabulary from where I came from was completely different. There was no understanding. I got thrown in with the wolves, basically. If you wanted to know about scaffolding and putting up brick and putting up drywall and things of that nature, I could tell everybody what to do, but someone turned around to me, which I had said to you before, well, in television and in movies, it's called B-roll. Well, does anybody know what B-roll is out there? Okay. Want to share? Yeah, what's B-roll? Right. I had no idea what it was. So after faking it for a little while and wanting to know what it was, I had to turn around to the director and say, look, the only thing I know about rolls are sushi rolls. So if you want to get this right, you have to explain to me a little bit of television, because I'm not from the television world. So sometimes you have to learn. Keep your ears open, your mouth shut, and say, all right, you know what, I'll learn. But it took a little while. But once I got it, then I was like an old expert.
Always act like you've been there before, and don't be afraid to ask questions, no doubt about it. My father taught me life's about plan B. You can have the best laid plans. Something goes wrong. Who are you going to lean on? What are you going to do? You take a step back and figure out what plan B is going to be. And it's great to have mentors around you. Before we get to the next question, I want to ask you, were there other mentors who carried you along or helped you through, or were there people that you, heroes that you had growing up, or somebody that you wanted to emulate that you ended up meeting? Any stories like that?
Honestly, for me, just from everyone telling me to get into the home improvement world and into the HGTV realm, or this old house, and just watching it all along, and then to be put under the wings of the Property Brothers, it meant a lot to me. These guys are, world-renowned guys, and they're hard to meet. Everybody wants to meet them, and I have a direct line of communication with these guys from day one. So it means a lot to me. And when I got picked up for Love It or List It, Drew Scott actually gave me a call. He says, "Give me a shout." So I called him back. He says, "Remember one thing." He said, "Learn everything you can, because this show is not your show, but the next one is going to be your show." So it really, really meant a lot to hear that from a guy like Drew Scott. And just this morning, Jonathan Scott texted me. He said, "How's things, guy? I'm going to be in the city. Want to get together?" So it means a lot. And those are mentors to me, but they're new mentors growing up, because anything like this, I wouldn't have really had a mentor for, except for my dad putting me in business. But otherwise, it's a lot of who you meet along the way, and gaining genuine relationships with people. You'll know who you need to meet along the way. You know who your friends are. It's who you click with, basically.
I kind of lucked out when I first got to LA. I got to meet a graduate from Ithaca College, Judy Marks, who had gone to Ithaca like 10 years before me, but she was out in LA and she was representing cinematographers as an agent. She had about 12 of the best DPs in Hollywood at the time. So I got to be a camera intern for Judy, where I could go on all these sets and just watch all these mentors, and there were John Toll, Larry Fong. These are guys that came from commercials and music videos that are now doing features. So I got to learn and be on set with all these guys that are doing some of the best work in LA, and it was just like the best learning experience ever. So those were my mentors.
Networking. We probably grew up in an era when we had Rolodexes, and everybody you meet, you write their name down, you write their contact information down. Now you put it in your phone, and you hope your phone doesn't get lost or get dropped in the ocean or something. But you have a list of contacts, people that you rely on. Everyone you meet, make contact with them, have their information, because you never know when they might get in contact with you or you might get in contact with them. And these are people, these are friends now, and people that you have come into contact with, whether it's through television, whether it's through college. They are your network community, and those are the people that you're going to rely on. And Gail, like you said, you have that strong bond with people that you know how you're going to work with. They know how you work, you know how they work, and you can get things done together. Okay, another question. I saw some right there in the middle.
Hi. So is there something you wish you would have known when you were first starting out your career and going into the industry that you know now, or you learned along the way, something you would have wished you'd known earlier?
Don't get into television? Just joking. I just wish I would have had a little bit of a better background moving forward, but learning the hard way sometimes is the best way, because you really learn the ropes. And sometimes it's better for the next move. That's the only thing I can say.
You know, I think once you're in it and getting in is the hardest part, I think. And I think if you focused on that and you get that opportunity, once you're in that door, I think it's just about doing what you're asked to do, and really taking everything in like a sponge and absorbing and listening, because that's how what would I do different? I would have listened more, just because I feel like there's so much to learn, and it's so fast and everything's coming at you really quickly. But the more you just stand back, you get your break, stand back, listen, take it all in, and just think about it, and that will help you kind of guide. You'll learn what you lean towards and what you don't, and guide where you're going to go next.
I wish I interned more. I
Excellent.
interned in radio, and I really wanted to do television, and I kept interning in radio, and I don't know why. And then I think going to your point, Gail, is, you said, you're in a club. I remember starting at Food Network, and they're like, welcome to the club. And I didn't understand what that was until, really, it's such a small industry when you get in it. It seems so big, and then you're in it, and you're like, wow. And I've jumped around to a bunch of networks, and so have a lot of my colleagues. So it's, you know everybody, so you can't burn any bridges. And you never know when, so-and-so's assistant is going to be, a VP 3 networks down the line. So you want to keep close relationships, and you want to make those connections, and you want to respect everybody.
Excellent point, because so many people that you might have gone into an industry, whether it's the mailroom, whether it's a production assistant, whether it's a grip, suddenly they are running the show. And you don't know how people are going to rise and how you are going to rise. Excellent point.
Yeah, I think when I was first starting out, I wish I could have told myself to specialize earlier, to find something that spoke to me and focus on that more. When I first made my transition into animation, I tried to sponge up everything. I wanted to learn effects, I wanted to learn animation, I wanted to learn how to model characters. I wanted to have every single skill set, which is kind of impossible. It's important to have a rough understanding of all the different parts of the craft, but finding one thing that you're really good at and focusing on that makes you a much more attractive person. And maybe I would have had a little less failure in my applications when I was finally applying for work. There's a concept we have that we call T-shaped people, where you have a wide, shallow understanding of a lot of topics, but then one topic that you're really, really proficient at. And I would have explained that concept to myself back when I was first starting, for sure.
I totally agree with that. In Hollywood, they tend to like to pigeonhole you into certain roles. Like as a DP, oh, you're the car guy. oh, you're the beauty guy. Or you're the narrative indie guy. And it's like, you can't really be all of them. And I came out of film school wanting to do all of them. And that probably was my downfall, was enjoying all of it in my photography and my cinematography. I wanted to shoot everything I possibly could, and I took every job I could, and I didn't specialize. So maybe it's kind of sad that you have to specialize, but it's probably recommended.
I was in a workshop one time, and the speaker was talking. He was a cinematographer who works for NASA, and he does all this brilliant work. And they had asked him one time, he started out just, shooting sports. So they asked him one time, can you film an action scene? He never filmed an action scene. He filmed sports, which is action, but his answer was, sure, I can do that, even though he never did it. So he figured out a way to get it done. Oh, can you film underwater sequences? Well, he had never filmed underwater sequences. But he said, yeah, I can do that. And he figured out a way to get it done, and so on and so forth. And that's what carried him through the industry and rising up through the ranks. So excellent question. And one thing that I learned today about what you just said is all of you have discussed failures and not being afraid to fail. I mean, how many times do we see it in society, unfortunately, where we're not allowing our children to fail, for instance? And me as a parent of 3, we don't want them to fail. No, that's how they learn. That's how we learned. So, Tori, you said it. Do your failures early on, but you know what? You're still going to stumble up along the way. It's how you get up. It's how you react and how you don't make that same mistake again, because that's how you're going to learn. That's how we learned. And you want to do those things. You don't want to fail, but you can't be afraid of failing.
Don't look back.
Okay, excellent question. How about you over here?
Hi, my name is Maria, also from Montclair, New Jersey. I'm
Montclair.
a kids talent management and casting professional, and I also am starting to produce for online content. My question addresses this specifically. Do any of you feel, or what is your feeling on online content and streaming threatening the audiences and retention of film and television? Have you come across that, or what are your feelings, or do you see things swaying one way or the other?
I think if you're telling a strong, good story, you will have viewership, no matter where you are, because it's word of mouth. And because if it's something that's well written, well shot, well cast, if that gets out, I mean, we think about how much content is out there right now. There's quite a bit, but you know what the top 20 are. You know it, and it's still spread out. I mean, you still have your This Is Us on NBC. You have your network stuff. It's still quite sprinkled all over the place. I don't think for years, 10 years ago, somebody told me, oh, the network television is dead. It's not dead. People are still watching network television. People still have cable. It's about the story you're telling, and that's all that matters. That's to me. I mean, I want to work on good, true stories that people want to watch, either fun or superhero or action-packed. It doesn't matter. It just has to be really good, and that will get its own audience. It will.
How do you attract that audience, though? How do you get what you want to tell? If you're a storyteller and you have a film or a video, where do you begin to approach with so many options out there, right? You're not just going to go to Rockefeller Center anymore. You have so many other options. So how do you do it through email? Do you do it through knocking on doors, the old-fashioned way?
I think it's the power of social media, first and foremost, look at all your formats with Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, that alone. I mean, so many colleagues of mine have made short films. You know, we all kind of help each other out. We want to make things that there's no money for. But once they're made, it's film festivals, Monmouth County Film Festival. Get that out there. Get it out there. It's the power of the media now. Just everyone's on these phones. Spread the word. People will watch. People will watch.
Any other questions? We'll go to the third row here, this gentleman, and then behind him.
Hi. This question is actually for Ms. Gale. As far as between network television and streaming, because you've worked for both, I know. What would you say? Would you say that either has more creative control for the series itself?
It's a good question. I think because streaming is on the newer side, for me, I get there's more money, there's more time. The format is different. There's no upfront. Once a product is sold to a network, there's not a lot of time to have a season of television written. It's very, very fast. Streaming, you get a show sold, there's time in the writer's room. You can have all of the scripts written in advance, and then you go and you make them. And there's a difference because you do get a little more time to tell the story, and just to have the message be portrayed with a little more clarity. But I'll tell you, network, I'm going to pitch it again. Our show Emergence is fantastic, and I mean, again, it came up very quickly. I don't want to say scrambling, but it's a very tight turnaround. We air September 24th. Wu-Tang, we started shooting in January. We air September 4th. So look at the time. It's very quick, but they're both really good stories, and it's just a different kind of pace at working to get it on the air. So I would say a little more money and a little more time on the streaming, but let's wait. It's new. Once we get into more of a rhythm, it'll catch up pretty quickly, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I'd love to jump in on that question too. From a network side, there's a lot more scrutiny on the linear platform because it's still the biggest platform. It's still making the most money versus the streaming. There's a little bit more to play with, and it's not as scrutinized because of the length and working in kids television is even more because there's so many regulations for the linear experience versus streaming. You can be a little less from the standards and practices standpoint, which the FCC just has to catch up with at this point.
And I also am not convinced yet. I still think on the linear side there's more viewership on certain things.
More viewership.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
Right behind him.
And that's where the ad dollars are as
Exactly.
well. That's where it's going.
Hi, this question is for the panelists who are in animation. For the writer filmmakers who are in live action and perhaps have an idea, first-time idea for a treatment or a script for animation, what's the initial first step in order to perhaps get it in front of gatekeepers, or is it more a matter of making a short out of it in some sort of budget-conscious way and getting it out that way?
I couldn't say because by the time a project comes to my attention, all those decisions have been made. So I don't know.
I would say probably creating a short is your first step. We actually at Nickelodeon have a shorts program. So we do it in-house as well as there's a little bit of a once a year anybody can submit a short. Animation, I think, is so interesting because it's like the idea gets sold from a short, right? And animation, we call them carts, right? 11-minute carts that we produce for linear television, although I've been trying to change the format because I feel like it's so old. But I lost my train of thought. But from creation to air is such a long road. Like any new SpongeBob episode, is written and starts, to be drawn in September. We won't see it until the following summer.
What's the name of the shorts program, if you don't mind?
You know what? You can ask me after. I'll look it up.
But another venue, you mentioned it, if you have an idea for something, right, and you want to submit it to any film festival, I'm sure other film festivals around, including the Monmouth Film Festival, are looking for any good short, any good storyteller, and if it's animated, all the better, because you don't get as many as those. You don't see as many of those out there. So that could be another vehicle. This gentleman with the hat in the middle.
So let's say you have a short or a script or just an idea and you want to pitch it. How do you prevent the people that you're trying to sell it to from stealing it?
Copyright it. I would copyright. I mean, I hear all these stories about, you hear all these lawsuits. Well, they stole my idea. It's just, I would protect yourself. It's all about copyright infringement. Just be protected.
Yeah, I mean, when you come to Nickelodeon, there's definitely a huge process before you can pitch something. So we don't take your idea. And
we're not
it's
allowed
like
to,
I don't know the formal process.
I've been trying to pitch a few things myself over the years, and you can copyright stuff. It gets costly, it takes time. And when you do go to the networks, there's a lot of paperwork that needs to be filled out, if it's animated, if it's reality, if it's film, television, whatever it might be. My personal opinion is when it comes down to it, it's you. It's the character. It's the content that you're coming up with. No one is going to dream or put together what you are going to put together. They might get the initial, but you have the long haul. And you have the foresight to see what's going to go on, what's going to go into the project, where it's turning, what's going to be in the scene, what's not going to be in the scene. So it's really up to you to make the final decision. They might steal the idea, but the outcome is you. Am I wrong by saying that? It really comes down to the way you created it.
No, that's a valid point. Absolutely, yeah. It's getting that pitch and getting that idea heard by someone who can help spread it for you, whether that's an agent or a manager or somebody that you can connect or a producer who's like, oh, I know people who will want to read this or who this sings to me. I want to let's get this made. And it's a trust that they're not going to go and run off with your idea. But another thing too is just if you're around industry people, my advice would be just don't tell anybody in detail your idea, because that's your idea. Keep it close, inner circle.
And a lawyer or manager is going to help the process, because the networks are not going to talk to you directly. You'll get pushed to the side from where I stand.
So we have two behind you, over your left shoulder, either one.
Hi, I just want to add on this point about the gentleman asked a question of pitching the idea to some people. I don't agree with the point that the ideas don't get stolen, because my films have been stolen, so that's not the right way. The question comes, if you're trying to pitch, there are a lot of new people over here who are making films or making shows. Do you have a process that you entertain individuals directly, or do you go through this new concept of having agents and you got to go through them and they got to pitch it to you, or only the big people who can make some good shows can come to you?
Well, interesting. We're seeing that there's actually going to be a pitch workshop here tomorrow on how to pitch your idea. There are people. It's tricky. People pitch me a lot of ideas and give me a lot of scripts. And if it's a script for my show, I'm not allowed to take it. If it's a script they tell me this idea, I do take it and I read them. But I have a lot of contacts and people in networks that I could go to and try and have that made. It's how do you get that made and out there? It's tricky. You have to know people, and you have to kind of get into the door with agents and people who have the connections to the next level. And I would say come to this workshop tomorrow and hear what they have to say. I wish I had more answers for you.
Good plug. This gentleman?
Yeah, this question is sort of for Eric. You came out of a construction business where a lot of the work is done sort of silently, one person at a time. How hard was it you learned the technique that there's now going to be an audience watching you and you need to communicate what you're doing naturally, because now you have to talk scripts and things of that nature? How did you get that transition so that you could handle thinking, oh, I need to tell the audience about what I'm doing, even though it's second nature for people in the craft industry?
There's a bit of an explanation that goes into it. When you're speaking on the job per se, a lot of homeowner watching is not going to understand what you're saying. So what had to be brought over is a more broad language that could resonate with a broader audience, with women, with children. So you might be speaking about doing framing. And you can get very technical when you speak about framing, but you need to broaden. Well, we're going to raise the roof on this particular home, not to get so technical. So we have to take the technical aspect out of it in order to explain the story. That was one of the hardest parts that I had.
This gentleman over here.
Hello, I'm just curious if any of you have had any experiences in working with composers and any insights you may have with that, if you had any.
As an animator, have you worked with composers?
No, not in animation. Usually, actually, the music is done after us. So we will animate, and then sometimes we'll have like a scratch track or something, but the actual final composition happens after there's images. And sometimes it feels like a backwards process, but it's been finally honed by this point. So yeah, usually the composers come in very late in the game when it comes to feature film.
And on my side, on television, I've been working quite a bit with composers. On the Wu-Tang American Saga, RZA is actually doing the composing for that show. Luke Cage, we had Adrian Ali, who composed the songs and did the orchestration. And we learned, because those shows were so music-centric, we worked on that very early in the pre-production and throughout the shooting, because music was a character in the show. And it's really exciting because they come up with conceptual ideas of what they want to hear and and it's incorporated into the script. So if you're on a show that's heavy on the music side, then you do get involved really early, and they give us the knowledge of and the conceptual idea of what we're going to be shooting on the set with the track in mind. I mean, I remember reading the first episode of Luke Cage, and I made a playlist. My husband made a playlist of the songs that were in the script, so as I was reading the script, I could hear the songs. Music is a very powerful media in television and film, obviously, but yeah, it's hard to break into again, just because. And it's a hard industry to break into with the music, but there's a whole world of post-production that's incredible, and it helps tell the story.
Tor, have you had experiences with your cinematography and
no,
music?
I have not.
You have not? Interesting. So none of your video has been put to music?
Oh, it has, but long after me.
Okay, okay. How's your reaction when you see it with music?
It definitely adds a lot, for sure. It's a very powerful medium, sound and picture. And I work on the picture, and I'm always impressed with what happens with the sound.
Excellent. This gentleman here in the back row, right there.
I just wanted to bring it back for a minute to something you were kind of talking about. I'm currently teaching high school for 15 years after 12 years working in television and film, and I work with seniors a lot, and I give them the advice for going off to college and work. But having worked in this particular industry in a bunch of different capacities, as the panel has, I tell them 3 things, plus one you've already mentioned. Show up early, stay late, never say no. You've already mentioned, you talk to everybody, be friendly, remember names. In your experiences, does that apply not only to your industry, but to each of your areas about showing up early, staying late? Because I've talked about the opportunities I've had, so I wanted to know if any of you had stories that you can share. We have a very young audience here, film enthusiasts, but people that might be interested in going into.
If you're 15 minutes early, you're 15 minutes late. That's what I said. It's showing up, it's being there, being present. So much happens before, for a set, as you know, so much happens before call time, and we're all sort of waiting at the gate to get going. When we're in. But before then, there's, again, just so much sharing of information, and you learn so much. Early in the morning, end of day. End of day kind of becomes like a sort of big exhale of a sigh and say, okay, let's kind of talk about what happened today. But even that, it's part of the big learning process. What happened that was wrong? What can we do that can be better? And it's growth. It's forward always. That's good advice for students.
I believe if you're truly passionate, those things will just come naturally to you. And you don't have to I need to go in early to look good, or it'll just because you want to be there, you want to stay there, you want to be through the whole process. The true successes in Hollywood are those people that just love the craft.
The passion is really important. I would summarize all those advice, but just say, stay hungry and be honest with everyone you meet in the industry. Because if you have that passion and you do really care, everyone that you work with will see it. And then when a difficult challenge comes up, they'll think of you as the person to go to help solve it. And as a new student or someone who's just entering, those people shine compared to everyone else.
You know, I'm going to compare it to the job site. When I was on either the first or second episode of Love It or List It, now I'm the GC, I'm running everybody around, there's electricians, plumbers, people are running around all over the place, but we had a homeowner reveal coming up. And I had called the electrician in, we had to do some last minute electrical work. And I asked the electrician that was there, just please clean up after yourself because I have a reveal coming up, the job site's pretty clean, and you know, I just don't want anybody tripping over anything. So he actually told me no. So I said, I'm not asking you to clean the whole job site, just clean your area up. He says, no, he says, I don't get paid to do that. No problem. Listen, I didn't start out as the GC. I started out sweeping the floor. So I could sweep with the best of them. I swept up the floor. I called up his boss, and I asked him never to come back to the job. He asked me why. Well, I told him what happened. He said, no, I'll come and clean it. I said, no, it's taken care of already. Go the extra mile. It's not even a mile. It's an inch. But if you say no, he wound up losing the contract eventually because the people that were working for him didn't want to do anything. And he actually had a 15-job contract. And it wasn't because of this that he didn't have it anymore. It's just that that's just one particular thing that they didn't want to do, but there was no reason for it. So you know what? And this goes, if you want to be a director, producer, or a general contractor, sweep the floor, clean up the coffee cups, because you know what? The next person walking in is going to say, who did that? And you say, you don't even have to say anything. They know who did it. So it just comes with saying that.
When I was a full-time sportscaster, we had interns, and you mentioned internships before, but there was one group of Girl Scouts who were coming through. They had a tour of the studio, and a young girl came up to me and said, my brother wants to go into television, and he's a junior, he's a rising senior in high school. What does he have to do? And I said, well, if he's interested in sports broadcasting, have him give me a call. So he was a senior in high school. Seniors in high school do not get internships. He called me. I told him, you know what, are you interested in the industry? He said, yes. And I said, come on down. I met him, and he said, you know, he really wanted to learn more. So it was not common, and it was not certainly something within the television station's rules to have a non-intern follow me around in a news vehicle. So on any given Friday night, he would follow us along as we would cover high school football games. And he drove his own car and met us at each game. He was not allowed to ride in our news vehicles. But he interned for me indirectly, gave up, a senior in high school, giving up Friday nights to go follow a news crew around, a sports crew, and asked questions, followed us for 4 or 5 weeks, and it was amazing what he wanted to do. He was so motivated. This is what you alluded to, Tor. If you're really in love with it and you like to do it, it's not a job. It's something that he loved to do on a Friday night. Asked questions, went on to go on to the University of Maryland, was a star as a freshman, knocked down doors, became the first freshman on-air personality in University of Miami's history. He had it, but he wasn't afraid to go a different path. He wasn't afraid to ask questions. End of the story. When he graduated, he gave me a call, and he said, I got a job at MLB Network. I'm like, great, wow, that's awesome. You got a job right out of college at MLB Network. He got a job on air at MLB Network. That is unheard of. He has it. His name is Scott Braun. You can look him up. This is a kid who was a 17-year-old rising senior who just knew what he wanted to do and wasn't afraid to follow it in an unconventional path. He asked questions, he took notes, and he is a star. He is a star. And it doesn't surprise me because of who he is and what sacrifices he made to get there at a young age. This gentleman in the middle?
So this question is probably mainly for Tor, but perhaps others as well. So I'm interested in cameras, and I always wonder, how does a production or a movie decide what camera they're going to shoot with? Do they go to hire a DP? And
It's the last camera they used.
Does the DP say, we're going to, like, why is everything shot on an Alexa, for example? Does the DP come with that, or does a showrunner say, this is the camera I want, and do they?
Yeah, that's a challenge that we're up against right now. Being a new camera company, we're 6 years into making cameras. 15th was announced 2 days ago, 15th camera. But because we're new, big producers, Hollywood production companies, they're like, oh, no, it's untested. We can't risk the entire production on a new camera. But we're slowly making headway. I do shootouts all the time. I'm happy to go up against an Alexa with the Ursa Mini Pro, the Venice, whatever camera, because we're really punching above our belt. For our price point, we're a $6,000 camera that we compete with cameras that are $75,000 to $80,000. But it's that branding that we're working on because we're so new. We need to get the word out that the quality is there and they can trust it. So basically, like I said, producers like to do what they did last time because it's just easy. Just fill in the line items, duplicate. Because it's proven. It worked last time, let's do it again. So we're trying to fit in there and say, hey, we're here now, check us out. So we now have our third feature being shot on the Ursa Mini Pro this year, and hopefully more will follow, and people will start to see the quality and the price point. I didn't mean to get all black magic there, but that's
I like your pitch, though.
That's what we're up against is the branding and being new, because Arri's been doing it for 102 years. Arri's been doing this for 102 years, and they are the industry standard, and we have a lot of respect for them. But to come in 6 years and to be competing on that level with that kind of quality, I'm pretty proud of Blackmagic.
This gentleman here.
Thank you. Thanks for everybody being here. Thanks for you supporting. Thanks for supporting New Jersey. No, really, I think that's great. The City Arts here. Well, my question is to everybody: I'm a video developer, marketing, all of different things. I wear a lot of different hats, and sometimes I get myself in trouble. But where do you see the future of video content going? I mean, you were just talking about the technology and cameras and how now you have a $6,000 product that can compete at the same level as something that's 10 times or more in that price point. But more from the perspective of people absorbing content online. Like earlier you were talking about the different channels and so on that are available. Like would anybody like to share your vision and like, where do you see things going like 10, 20 years from now as far as people's desires of taking in content as well as maybe technology? I mean, Steve Soderbergh, I mean, he did 2 productions using the iPhone, and like all these things just like are amazing. So that's my question. Thanks.
Okay.
Well, I wanted to quickly add that we talked about distribution. There's so many more options to distribute. Acquisition stage is the cameras and even lighting now is much more affordable, and that's exciting. It makes these productions available to the masses, basically, from the middle school YouTuber to the ASC cinematographer. It's now more accessible. When I came out to LA in '95, for me to do a production was a huge ordeal. To get a rental film camera from Panavision or Arri, to buy film stock, to rent lights, to get insurance certificates, process the film, print the film, telecine the film, very expensive. These days, you can do so much more for almost nothing. We have a pocket 4K camera, it's $12.95. It shoots 4K RAW, $12.95, and you don't have to process the film. You just put the card in, bring it out, and you can use that card again. It's just, there's so many things that make it easier and more affordable to do high quality production now. And I wish I grew up in this era.
Yeah, that's the lowering of that bar of costs for making content means that the budget for our productions is no longer as big of a limiting factor. It's now the audience's time that's the most precious commodity. because there's content everywhere. Anyone can ingest any kind of content, and it's so easy to produce, and there's so much of it. It's a really good question because it's almost like we have to shift into how do we get people to pay attention to our content, not how can we get that content out there.
Yeah, we'll provide the tools. Now the writing's more important, I think.
Definitely.
The writing, the producing, all of that is going to put you above everybody else because the tools are there for everybody to have now.
We'll go over here first.
Hi, I just have a quick question for Eric. How do you get the shows? How do you get the people to renovate? How do you go to them? How do you find them? And have you ever had a house that you revealed and they didn't like it?
Ooh.
I watch your show and I watch crime shows every day. I'm in love with them. So congratulations on your show. But I've always wanted to know, like, you're all excited and then they don't like it.
Okay. Well, let's go a little back. They do casting calls for homes. So if a production is working in a certain area, they'll put out a casting call. Would you like to be on a certain show? Do you have a budget? And what do you have in mind? And then they go and they interview the people who own the home, and they see if their budget fits. They see if honestly, if the homeowners fit the situation that they're looking for. So it's a casting call for the home and for the homeowners as well. Because if it's, I don't want to say this the wrong way, if it's a boring couple,
Sure.
No,
It's entertainment.
It's entertainment.
It's entertainment.
So, right, if someone basically doesn't speak, it's not going to sell television very well. But the home is great. So it's a big mix-up. I'll make you laugh. We had one couple where the husband didn't say 2 words, but the wife said too much.
Sure.
Okay, and any time that he would speak, she would slap him and say, "You say too much." But it sold so well, and the home came along with it. So it sold good television. For me, as far as your next question is concerned, out of all of the homes that we've done for the production, and this is something that actually went public, when you sign up for these shows, you sign a lot of waivers, and you're really not allowed on the job site because of, you can get hurt. So you're really not allowed there. You're brought in by the production, and the production shows you what's going on and whatnot. Now, they'll come to you as homeowner, and they'll say, what colors do you like, what's your style, and they'll go along those lines. And they have design teams, and like I worked with Hillary for 70 episodes. You're going to meet up with her. You're going to give her your dreams. You're going to tell her what you want. But ultimately, at the end, it's what they pick, not what you pick. So that's where it kind of comes a gray area a little bit. There was one homeowner who didn't like it. I didn't really get into it too much. Because it became it was an issue. There was a lawsuit involved and whatnot. It went public in North Carolina, and I kind of stayed out of it a little bit. I don't know what happened with the production, but out of what I did, 99% of the people are happy with the outcome. I guess you're always going to have that one that doesn't like it along the way. I think that we all deal with that in life, but it does. Yes, sure. The question is yes. I mean, it wouldn't be normal if you didn't, have a problem here or there. But for the most part, everybody's smiling in the end. Listen, there's a lot of home improvement shows on the. If it was a problem every bit of the way, there wouldn't be any. So I hope I answered your question.
So we have about 4 minutes left. Time for just a couple of more questions. I know you already asked one. So somebody who didn't ask one that wants to get their question?
Hi, my name's Marcy, and I have a question for Gail and for Eric. And it's a simple question for Gail. First of all, my husband lived in Montclair, but I didn't. I took a violin lesson there. But what is a producer? And then I have I don't really understand exactly the definition of a producer. And then I have a quick question for Eric.
I'm what's called a line producer. There's lots of, you'll see on television shows, there's lots of producer titles. There's executive producer, co-executive producer, and then I'm what's called produced by, that's my title. I get the budget and the script initially when I get hired. They say, this is the show we want to make, this is how much money we think we have. I do a complete breakdown. I do the physical production. We do the casting, we pick the locations, we hire the crew. I tell them we don't have enough money, or I'll never tell them we have too much money. And so we kind of do the day-to-day operation of taking the physical production of making what's on the page and bringing it to life.
Thank you. And Eric, how many women, and what is the percentage of women with whom you work, not as designers, but as construction managers, who could say you're sick one day and they can take over the job, making the decisions on the foundation, going through the job with the electricians? The reason I ask is my partner was a construction manager for Turner in this city, and as a 23-year-old, he put up 2 high-rises, one on 6th Avenue and one on 3rd. And he and I renovated a house and built 2. I learned a lot from him. I couldn't start at the beginning, but I know the difference between a block foundation and a cement foundation. And I loved it. I loved opening the job at 6:30 in the morning for the men. I had a blast with the demo, the big cranes. So tell me, how many women do you work with who could handle taking over your position, and how rare is it for women to be construction managers?
Well, it's not rare for women to be construction managers, especially in, today. Everybody's learning, different trades. I deal with a lot of different women, but as far as other GCs or other builders on the job, it's not the high number that you think it might be. It's newer getting into the field now. I mean, I've dealt with some along the way, but personally, I couldn't recommend anyone filling my shoes. But I don't think that goes for men. I don't think that goes for women or men. I think it just comes with experience. You need experience on the job. Every day you're learning something new. So if you're a man or a woman, I don't think it really matters. It just really boils down to experience. But as far as filling my shoes, let's just put it to you this way. On HGTV right now, there's more women contractors that are airing than there are men.
And if you're good, hopefully they will find you. And
if you're good, you're good.
Right.
It's what it boils down to. It doesn't matter.
Outstanding. So, ladies and gentlemen, I know there are more questions. Unfortunately, this wraps up our 75-minute session with the panelists. So if you have any questions for them, we will be around later. They might be able to answer your questions then. Don't be afraid to approach them. I think, are you approachable? Sure. They say yes. It's unanimous. So they are approachable, but we do have to take some pictures out there first. So a big round of applause for our panelists, and a big round of applause to you, the audience, for asking such great questions and being here. For Greg, Nancy, Gail, Tor, and Eric, thank you all for being part of this discussion, and that wraps it up. But before you go, I just want to remind you all, there's plenty more to do this weekend. In addition to the numerous shorts, feature films, there are workshops going on all day tomorrow, including the Student Film Showcase. There's a New Jersey Veterans Showcase of films, so there's a lot more tonight and tomorrow. If you can stay around and be a part of that as well, they would appreciate it, and you'll be rewarded very greatly for it. Thank you very much, and have a great afternoon.